Hi, friends. Welcome back to my show. My name is Ashley Ariana. Today, I am joined by Steph Sanchez, one of my favorites, and we are here on a Victory Monday, feeling really good. Steph, how are you doing? How do you feel about this win, about this Monday? You also had an eventful weekend, so I want to ask you about that. But let's start with the 49ers. How do you feel about the game yesterday? How you doing?
Yeah, actually, because I was, at Disneyland or just LA in general this weekend. Yesterday I wasn't at Disneyland. So I was kind of like in between like going or leaving our hotel and then hanging out with some friends in LA. So luckily I was able to catch most of the game. Like I actually wasn't sure if I was going to be able to at all, and in my head I was like I'll just watch Monday, but I did get to watch almost every place, so you can't ask for
Oh
anything
yeah.
better than that. And obviously, I feel great about the win and about what I saw from this 49ers team because right from the get go, they looked like the team we had seen, the team we had been accustomed to the first 5 weeks of the season, right? And the question during the bye week and during the losing streak was like, do they even still have that version of themselves in them still? Like, oh, who's going to be the team that shows up in week 10, right? Like that's what we were
Yeah.
kind of wondering. And I always like I was saying to myself like whatever team shows up against the Jags, that's probably the team we're going to get for the rest of the season.
Yes.
So I feel even greater about that. They still have it in them. They made some much needed adjustments on the defensive side of the ball. Having Trent Williams and Debo Samuel back on the offensive side of the ball proved to be, as we expected, a huge positive impact for them. And really, if they're playing at that level at both sides of the ball, it's going to be really hard for even a good team like the Jags to beat them.
I completely agree. I like what you said about like it felt like that team was lost. It felt like no matter what kind of depths that they were trying to drag themselves up from, that they just couldn't show up with that same energy and force. And it was really exciting to see it flash again and be like, okay, it's in there. Those are
Yeah.
the stars playing up to their level, that energy, that physicality. That's what this brand of 49ers football is. And we see it and we know it exists. And I do think, even in their post game interviews, I was kind of shocked at maybe how candidly the players kind of address that narrative. I think sometimes players kind of try to be like, oh, like that's not really a thing. But George Kittle, Fred Warner, and Trent Williams all talked about thinking that like coming into this game or yesterday's game, coming into it thinking we need to make a statement. This win is important. This is going to set us up for the rest of the season. Who we show ourselves to be in this game is going to be the type of effort and energy that we're going to carry with us throughout the rest of the season, regular season, and hopefully into the playoffs and into a Super Bowl victory. I found it pretty interesting that they were so candid about addressing it in that way, because sometimes fans will kind of like, or I feel like players and teams can kind of say that's a fan narrative, and all teams are going to go through little slumps. But it seems like, at least from the way they were talking, that the players themselves felt like it was important for them to prove to themselves that they could kind of rise to the occasion and live up to their standard and prove that their identity still exists within themselves. So I thought that was really cool. I thought the game in general was just like from a more trivial sense, I thought it was a really fun watch. Like when we think about the offense and how they spread the ball around more, I thought that made the game more exciting when you see the 49ers defense playing in the way that you expect the 49ers defense to play. Like as a fan, I'm like, this is why I love this team. When you
Yeah.
see guys just sprinting to the ball, tackling with such force, sprinting to the quarterback, trying to wrestle for which one of them gets the sack. It seemed like all of them not only wanted to get there, but wanted to get home and wanted the sack for themselves. Like it seemed like, although they came out with intensity and energy and focus, it also seemed fun. And maybe, part of that probably has to do with the more that they got up, the less maybe pressure it felt, and the more they were able to feel the pressure. I think a good way to identify that is at the end of the game when they were trying to get Christian McCaffrey the touchdown, like how excited the sideline was about it. Or
Yeah.
even when Ambry Thomas made a great play, like Kyle Shanahan is going to send himself to the booth because he was like in the middle of the field cheering for him. So I feel like when you see things like that as a fan, it just like really kind of brings you there as someone who's watching from home. You can feel that energy is like palpable. I'll learn how to speak. I'll learn how to speak other times. But yeah, so aside from like it being necessary for, the eventual, because in the long term, a win against an AFC team, the Jaguars, not the most important thing. But I think when you understand maybe what this meant for them and proving and for the team morale, I think it was just a really fun game to watch and a really promising game. Although I mean I still have tons of questions. This um maybe is a tangent, but I'll ask you in the beginning. Do you think that the 49ers are back? Do you feel as good about them today as you did when they were on their 5-game win streak? And I think that's important because when they were on their 5-game win streak, like that doesn't mean that we thought they were going to win the Super Bowl. We thought they could. We thought they were Super Bowl contenders, but they still, even after this game, they haven't really proved that they can come back from behind. They've proved that they can win this way. This is the way that the 49ers win. So there's still questions, but at least even with those questions at the beginning of the year, I still felt confident that they would figure it out and that they could do it. And I'm wondering if you feel just as confident now after a game like this, or if you're still kind of like, hey, continue to prove it to me. Like those losses stuck with you more. How do you feel?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel better about this team than I did during those losses, right? Like I feel I don't know if I feel the same as I did while they were on that 5-game win streak. I do feel like we have to see more. I want to see it week in and week out, right? And I don't want any lapses of play in production and all these things. So I'm gonna need to see more of it, and I'm gonna need to see it against better teams. Like the Jags are a good team, so it's great to feel, I guess, optimistic about this team based on their performances against a team like the Jags. Also, the Cowboys, for example, those are both really good teams, and I feel like they brought their best effort against both of those teams. And so yeah, they have a tough second half of their schedule, right? And you have Seahawks, Eagles, Seahawks, and that's going to be the true test, right? And that's going to be like if we see this same version of that team then, oh man, it's going to be crazy. But like you said, I think we need to see a little bit more from them. We still have questions on can they win the gritty kind of games. It's very possible those games against those teams are going to end up being gritty, because they're just
Mhm.
really good teams who are going to make you scratch and claw for every, yard, every point, and all those things. So, I'm going to need to see more. And I do want to see them do it different ways, right? Not just getting into these early leads and then, cruising from there like they do, which is great. I mean, it's great. They can do that, right? But that's not how every game is going to be.
I completely agree. I wanted to ask you when we're kind of talking about the different ways that they can win. I think we did see some adjustments from Kyle Shanahan, even though the win itself like followed the same program of get up early, and be able to kind of like ride the lead from there, rely on your defense, but also play complementary football. I think there was a major distinction, and it's something that at least I know you and I have been talking about for quite some time, which is, hey, Kyle, spread the ball around. More people exist besides Christian McCaffrey, and they're actually really, really, really good on your team. I don't understand why George Kittle doesn't get a minimum. I mean, last on Sunday yesterday, he got 4 targets.
Mhm.
He led the team in reception yards, performed incredibly. If you give him a 50-50 ball, he's going to come down with it. He's going to make you look great. I do not understand why, like, in the losing streak, they lost Debo Samuel, they lost Trent Williams, and George Kittle got 2 targets one of those games. Like, that is so frustrating to me. I feel like there should never be a game for the rest of the season that Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle do not get at least 4 targets. And to me, I feel like that's pretty low. Like, I feel like I tweeted out, and maybe this is hyperbolic, but I was like, he needs 10 targets a game. I don't understand. Um, but I felt like Kyle Shanahan relied on the passing game a bit more than his run game, and kind of call the balanced offense and really spread it around to his playmakers, which, like I said, one, just made it more exciting to watch, but two, was actually very effective. So did you notice that adjustment? How do you feel about it? And do you think it'll be something that Kyle Shanahan sticks with going forward?
I mean, I don't know if that was necessarily an adjustment. I feel like that's something we have seen throughout the season, and I think it just it tells you how much trust Kyle Shanahan has in Brock Purdy. Like they had the 2nd and inches when George Kittle caught that touchdown, right? And it was a beautiful play. But just the balls to go for that on a 2nd and inches when you have Christian McCaffrey and you could have probably just as easily gotten the first down with a run, but they went for that play, right? Like I think it tells you a number of different things, and I think it starts with the trust that Kyle has in Brock. So I think in Kyle's eyes, it's like, hey, I have someone who can run these plays for us and make these throws for us. And so why not? Why not see what happens if I call this play right now? So I think it's great because I think it allows Kyle Shanahan to call games a little more freely. And I mean, I love that development, and I think if it's one that we've seen all year. The issue with the losses were that you weren't getting like complementary football, like the run game wasn't successful, and so they were throwing and throwing, but it was married with a bad run game, right? So it was harder to eventually get good, I guess, like momentum out of the pass game, and especially because it feels like the opposing defenses kind of just knew what to expect. But going back to, what you mentioned about George Kittle getting targets, I mean, the 49ers, like I'm looking at their pass attempts per game, and they actually averaged the least of any team,
Yeah, in the NFL, right?
28.1. So given that, like you think about all the weapons that they have as well, it is kind of hard to like spread the ball around, or sorry, it's hard to continue to target one guy over and over when you're not even throwing that much to begin with. Like say 28, 30 throws a game, you're not going to have 1/3 of those go to George Kittle every time. Sometimes if like the opponent you're going up against calls for it, sure. But I actually like that Brock Purdy's a guy who kind of spreads the ball around. I mean, we saw everyone but Christian McCaffrey get a
Get
touchdown
a touchdown.
on
This is
Sunday.
ironic.
And, it just speaks to all the weapons that they have, right? And so I like that they spread the ball around. I do agree. Like, I think one of the better developments of not having Debo out there is, I think, like the previous 2 games, not counting the one on Sunday. Like, I feel like they rediscovered George Kittle. And
Yeah.
even though he wasn't getting a ton of targets, his catches were impactful, right? Like they were big plays, or
Yeah.
just like really important key plays
They were
in the
keeping the
game.
drive alive for sure.
Exactly. So I feel like they rediscovered that. I feel like we saw it again despite just 3 catches, right? Like we saw it again on Sunday. And so to me, like he doesn't need a ton of targets, but as long as those targets and those catches are like valuable to the team, and so far they have been, they've made a big difference. I think the 49ers would be really happy with that.
I think it would be smart going forward because the 49ers did pass the ball way more than they normally would on Sunday's game against the Jaguars. And I think that should be something that they stick with. When you look at previous Super Bowl contenders in the last 5 years or 10 years, I've seen this stat on Twitter, but I might be not quoting it correctly. But I think most quarterbacks have thrown like a minimum of, they have like a lot of pass attempts compared to what the 49ers are used to. So I feel like maybe leaning on a more passing, like a stronger passing attack in this offense could be smart, because if you have so many weapons, why would you not utilize them? To me, this offense is only more effective when you're getting guys like George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel involved. Even Christian McCaffrey, I felt like when we're talking about adjustments, I felt like passing him the ball more than just handing it off to him was really effective yesterday. Do you think, because I think that the 49ers, I think the addition of Trent Williams also was so impactful. It's kind of funny when a backup comes in and performs pretty well. I think I can be like, oh, like good, like he's not doing bad. And then when you see Trent Williams in there, you're like, oh, like the difference is so stark. I felt like the 49ers really beat up the Jaguars on both sides of the trenches on both sides of the ball, but that offensive line looked really good. I thought John Feliciano was really good. I wonder when Aaron Banks shows back up. I wonder how they'll add him to the rest of the line. I imagine maybe they'll sub him in for Burford, who did have that one effort play that I thought was really where the announcers called it like the one man tush push because Christian McCaffrey was like stopped, and then you saw Christian McCaffrey like try to keep going, and then just Burford just like pushes him, and there's like 5 Jaguars players, and they ended up getting the first down. So I really do. That's what I mean. Like when you not just on defense, but when you looked at yesterday's team, like the effort and energy was just so there, which is really impressive because that was an early body clock game. Obviously, they had a bye week to like mentally prepare, but when you think about the Jaguars also had a bye week to prepare, and they weren't adjusting to flying across the country in the early body clock. I just felt so excited when I was watching them. But you kind of mentioned something that you thought that the offense maybe was running more efficiently due to Kyle Shanahan's trust in Brock Purdy, and something that we talked about over the bye week was kind of wondering, hey, will Kyle Shanahan continue to show trust in Brock Purdy, or because of his struggles, will we see him kind of revert to trying to get the ball out of Purdy's hands? And I'm really glad that he didn't go away from that. And Purdy proved him right. He threw a couple darts, like straight amazing balls. He also threw a couple ones where you were like, but he gave his playmakers a chance to make him look right, and they did. I thought Kyle Shannon's reaction to that first touchdown after the post game when he called it the worst decision of Brock Purdy's career was kind of hilarious. Definitely one of those plays where you're watching and you're like, no, yes, good job. But how did you feel watching Brock Purdy? Did you notice any difference in his confidence, or did you think he came out maybe mentally prepared for the challenge ahead of him? Just how did you feel watching Brock Purdy in yesterday's game, and Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan in conjunction with each other?
Yeah, I mean, I really never noticed any difference in Brock Purdy as far as his demeanor out on the field. Like I think even in the face of him having interceptions and the way those games ended, like I feel like he was still going out there and being the same confident guy that he is, right? And commanding the huddle and all that. So I think we saw that version of him again. I did think it was kind of funny, like him speaking to the team, owning up to, the interceptions and having to take care of the football. And then his first touchdown throw was that one, right? It's like, okay, that one could have been ugly, but, then again, no defender got their hands on it, right? Like, I guess he threw it at the right spot. But yeah, that one was a little risky, and so I thought that was funny. But I have no different feelings on Brock Purdy. Like I have felt like he's been the same guy all year. Really, I think what needed to improve, of course, was protecting the football. He definitely did that in this one. Of course, like when we saw those interceptions in these past during the lose streak, it happened in times when they were down and he felt like he needed to be the hero at the end, right? And so we haven't seen him back in that situation. So I still want to see Brock Purdy in that situation and see how he's going to handle it, if he will take care of the football in those moments, right? And take more.
He did have that one.
Risks.
What was that one? The intentional grounding penalty. That's the thing.
Yeah, see, it's like it's little. It's little things like that it's like, dude, like you're doing too much. Like you didn't have to do that. But it's little things that I think mental
Every player
errors,
is going to have something that you
young
have to look.
quarterback errors, like I feel like he'll just learn to not do those things with time, at least you hope, right? So, obviously I want to see more of Brock and how he handles like adverse situations, but obviously when the 49ers get up early, it's hard to stop this offense and it's hard to slow down Brock Purdy because then he really just gets on this roll. And even in the losses, like he had good game. Like he had good plays, he had good throws in those games where he threw interceptions too. So it's not like we've ever seen him play horribly for like one entire whole game. You know what I mean? So I still feel good about Brock Purdy. I'm glad Kyle Shanahan trusts him. And we're seeing the level of the offense, kind of the ceiling of the offense kind of be at this level that it is right now. And I do think a lot of it has to do with Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel being out there,
Mm-hmm.
as you mentioned. And we had been talking about that for a while,
I
like
know.
how much of a difference those guys were going to make, and we saw it multiple times on the game on Sunday. So happy to have those guys back, and happy to have the offense rolling just like it was at the beginning of the year.
Moving away from the offensive side, how about Steve Wilkes moving to the sideline? Do you think that that was the key to it all? I don't think it was actually any maybe in-game adjustments, any player personnel decisions. I think it was just him standing on the sideline. I feel like we fixed it.
That's
You know what I
it.
mean?
That's
Did
the
you
that's it,
see?
right?
Did you see? Just as a side note, really quick, did you see? Because the camera was obviously trying to follow him. Did you see him with his little notepad, like hiding in, like trying to like recluse himself, like creating a little booth atmosphere for himself on the field? The camera flashed over to him. He's not talking to anyone. He's like so focused. His shoulders are like this, and his pad is like this, and he's like trying to create like a space of closure for. So, no, I will say, on that Ambry thing where the whole entire team decided to, um, get penalized, he was very excited for Ambry and that team, and I thought it was nice seeing Ambry too. I saw a clip after this, it was just like on Twitter where Ambry was kind of shaking him and being like, "I got you, and I want you to remember this."
Yeah. Yep.
And that eye contact that Steve Wilkes can get with his players, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead said that he felt good having Wilkes there and being able to kind of look him in his eyes. So I don't want to. I'm joking around, but I don't want to completely trivialize. Once again, I'll learn how to speak a different day. But I don't want to trivialize the impact altogether. But I did think that those instances were a little bit funny. But there were some adjustments, and it was a difference. How did you feel about Steve Wilkes and his defense on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, they looked like the same defense that they did against the Dallas Cowboys, which was everything pretty much clicking, the defensive line, creating pressure, and not only creating pressure, but making an impact, right, on the quarterback, and actually influencing bad decision making or holding on to the football longer. So I loved it. I loved it. It was obviously not just because Wilkes was on the sidelines, right? I think we saw a number of adjustments that they made on the defensive side of the ball that allowed for the defensive line to look like their old selves again. I know one of the things Christopher Johnson in the comments here mentioned was a different defensive fronts. Like there was a point in which he was putting both Nick Bosa and Chase Young rushing from the interior. Like those are new wrinkles like we hadn't seen before, and it gets the quarterback thinking even just like a second longer. And that is the margin that we were seeing quarterbacks get the ball out, in that losing streak, right? Where quarterbacks were just getting the ball out, and you'll see Nick Bosa get so close, and it's like, oh, he was right there. And so again, like if you could just slow down the quarterbacks like processing a little bit, make them hesitate. I think that's the key for this defense, and they were able to do that on Sunday. And of course, I think the addition of Chase Young helped out a lot as well. I think we saw the defensive line just look reinvigorated, like Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, like Eric Armstead,
He
even
came
like
out of the gate. Hargrave. I feel like they someone Chris Kocurek sat him down and were like, "Hey, we are paying you." And I know that that's probably not how it actually happened, but
yeah,
whatever mental shift he needed to do, maybe it was just his own pride. I felt like, I mean, it was legitimately like 2 seconds in the game and trying to do everything he could to force a sack in the pressure. And I like what you
yeah,
said about the pressures that they made, because you and I had talked about this before, because I think a lot of people, when people were kind of criticizing the lack of sacks, people were like, okay, but they're leading the league in pressures, like they are getting this pressure. And my criticism of that wasn't that pressure isn't important, but to me that like the stat of pressure isn't as effective as like the eye test of pressure, because you can have pressure and Joe Burrow or Kirk Cousins still completes the pass for the first down, or you can have pressure and you're rattled and now you're throwing an erratic ball that doesn't get completed or gets intercepted. And that was the type of pressure that the 49ers were bringing. Not only were they getting home and getting the sacks, but on the plays that they weren't getting sacks, the pressure was affecting the quarterback and was affecting the Jags' offensive game plan. And I thought that that was like that sort of swarm mentality to football that the 49ers talk about, and maybe that like all out mentality that I've spoken about when I talk about this team's identity. I felt like you saw that in the type of pressure that they were bringing, and in the type of energy they were bringing. I saw Baldy's breakdown on Twitter. He covered a play where Fred Warner actually like didn't like do the play that he was wanting to. He's a receiver goes this way, he goes that way, receiver jukes him. Fred Warner dives in front of the ball, gets his hands like pretty much on the ball, makes like a great diving
yeah.
catch, but the
So
receiver just makes the better play. He has his hands on it, turns around within like 0.2 seconds. I think it was Dre Greenlaw hits him, so it doesn't go for anything. And it's a great play by Fred Warner, but Fred Warner gets up and he's like angry that he didn't make that play. And I just thought that that was like those mental things are something that I think a lot of people can be like, oh, like mental things don't matter. But it's like when we saw the team 2 weeks ago, those were the things that, I was the most critical of. Like when we saw Travarius Ford kind of make a business decision he play to not go all out. It just felt exciting, and it felt like every player felt like it was their job to make the most important play, and like they wanted to be the one to get the sack. They wanted to be the one that made the tackle, and I just thought it was really impressive. Did you make anything of the Ambry Oliver change? Do you think that that will
yeah,
be something that carries on, or do you think that that was only effective because maybe the Jags weren't prepared for it?
um, so
Two separate
kind
questions,
of
maybe.
both in a way. Like
Okay.
I do want to say Ambry Thomas played a great game.
Yeah.
And that was pleasantly surprising to me because I've been in the past, as I'm sure a lot of us have, been a little critical of Ambry Thomas, right? And it's like, no, 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 don't put him out there. But
Really
but
small.
at the same
Go
time,
ahead.
like I think we also know how much of an upgrade Lenore is at the nickel spot compared to Isaiah Oliver. So experimenting with it is not so bad, right? Obviously, that's not a change that I was expecting coming out of bye. I doubt the Jags were expecting that, as well, right? They were probably out there thinking, oh, we're just going to target
I
Oliver
love that that was
against Christian Kirk so many times. It's going to be great. But
the 49ers. Really quickly, the 49ers have more like content creator media members than any team in the NFL. And you could have given
oh,
them
dude.
all. And I think they did. Every single person was like keys to win, things that they're going to do, adjustments they're going to make. I guarantee I want to pay someone to go through and watch 48 hours of just straight 49ers content. And I guarantee no one's adjustment was like, hey, let's bring Ambry Thomas in.
Well, that
Uh,
was one of I tweeted that during the game. I was like, Ambry Thomas being one of the post-buy adjustments and a successful one at that was not on my bingo card, but good for him, right? Okay, so
Definitely.
the second part of what you were saying or your question is we've seen this from Ambry Thomas before. We've
He's
seen him have a
amazing.
really good game before. And then
Yeah.
it's followed by a not so good game. And then it becomes a stretch of like not so good games. That is the Ambry Thomas experience. And so it was great that he looked great on Sunday, but I need to see it week in and week out, and the team needs to see it week in and week out. That's because if it was Isaiah Oliver out there, it would have kind of been more of the same thing. I think Trevor Lawrence would have found Christian Kirk, whoever was in the slot, whoever Isaiah Oliver was covering, he would have gotten the ball out much quicker. There'd be so many of these, but they were so close moments, and I think it would have been a completely different day for the defense. So if Ambry Thomas can keep up his level of play, how he looked on Sunday, then I'm going to feel a lot better about this defense. But if Ambry Thomas looks like the same version, because Ambry Thomas, he could kind of look like the same, like he can look like Isaiah Oliver looks in the slot on the outside. Like sometimes when quarterbacks start to really target him,
Yeah.
he's like, he'll
And I
give
felt
up
like the
everything.
Jaguars I felt like they didn't go after him as much as like if the 49ers would have been like facing the Rams, like a team that knows the 49ers and maybe knows Ambry Thomas. I felt like the Jaguars were a little bit they were really set on the screen game, which I understand they were trying to like negate that pass rush, but I do think maybe a more familiar team might have tried to target Thomas more.
Yeah, so I want to see more. I want to see more out of Ambry Thomas. I want to see if he can keep it up. It's possible that he can. It's possible that he does. Right? Like right now we just don't know. I think it's too early to say and assume that Ambry Thomas is going to be one of the saviors of the defense just because he had this good game on Sunday. I think I know a little bit better than to just assume that, right? I'm not as naive.
Fine. Be rational.
Yeah, so let's just see how he looks, in these next few games. Again, a really tough stretch, coming up for this team, especially when you look at some of the wide receivers that they're going to be playing. You think about Tampa Bay, they're not like, one of the best teams, but they have really good receivers. Mike Evans, Godwin. They have Trey Palmer now, rookie, who looks pretty legit. So they have another test coming up, and then then is another one. Then it's the Seahawks, and then it's the Eagles and the Seahawks again. So they're gonna get tested. We're gonna find out about Ambry Thomas, and if he can keep this up real soon.
I love that. I think I completely agree. Now, one other guy that I feel like we should talk about because an important addition, and I think maybe John Lynch deserves some credit for bringing him in. But how did you feel about the addition of Chase Young? And do you think that maybe that was a key, not adjustment, but change that brought some energy and potentially can bring some sustained success to, because we're talking about maybe the Thomas move affected the Jaguars game, but we're not super confident in it long term. There might still be some question marks and some help that the secondary needs. But do you think that, because I mean, Bosa had his welcome to the 2023 season party yesterday, and he looked, I mean, they looked giddish together. It was, which I totally understand. When I bet this is how you were in Disneyland, just like skipping around with your friends. And you know what I mean? When I run into my best friend Lacey, that's me too. So I totally understand the excitement. But do you think that the two, Bosa and Chase Young, working in tandem together is going to be something that helps that defensive line moving forward? Because I really think that we're talking about, maybe the corners playing a little bit more man coverage, not giving so many easy completions, Thomas performing well, Fred Warner and the defense in general having so much more effort and energy. But I think what it comes down to that was actually the most impactful and that maybe would have made an impact in the losses that we didn't see now and obviously makes such a big difference was Bosa getting sacks and getting home. That's a key difference that we saw in this game that we haven't consistently seen in previous games. And if they want to win the Super Bowl, your star players have to play like star players. And yesterday, Nick Bosa did. So do you think that addition of Chase Young is something, one, just in general, that you want to celebrate? And do you think that that'll continue to be an effective duo?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think having Chase Young out there kind of reinvigorated the defensive line, especially Nick Bosa, right? Like I kind of felt like it was just I don't want to say like morale boost, but it just kind of felt like a good like energy boost, shot of adrenaline, whatever you like, cliche you want to use for this defensive line. And also for Chase Young. Like I think it looks like they're
Yeah, he
having
seemed
fun.
excited. Yeah.
Like, it looked like Nick Bosa and Chase Young are just having fun out there, and it's like a competition, like, who's gonna get to the quarterback first? Like,
Did you
I'll
see that
beat you
little
there.
clip where he was like, "Oh no, I'm gonna get him next time." I like that.
Yeah, like, it's so
That's the
that
mindset you
that's
want your
just
guys to have, right?
exactly, it's just, a great like, whatever they need to feel motivated to get to the quarterback, hey, like that's cool. That's awesome. And I think we saw it out on the field Sunday, right? I think it's really cool that they have such a close friendship. Like you could tell, like they're such bros. Like what a bromance. Like the little like
The little head.
headbutts and
The
the
little
little headbutts, the little helmet kisses, whatever you want to call it. Um I think
I loved
it's
it.
great. It's great to see off the field, but also when they're on the field and they're going after the quarterback, like the one
They
sack
challenge
where
each other.
they
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 challenge each
challenge
other.
each other. That's such a yes. That's a great way to put it. They challenge each other, and I think they sharpen each other as they do that, right? And
I
it's
also
gonna be
feel
fun.
like
Like
I noticed, and who knows if this is true, but in the little clips that were going viral, I noticed a bit of like maybe, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, and I don't know, maybe I'm not phrasing it right because I think some people like I feel like boys are fragile, so they could take this wrong. But I could be rephrasing this incorrectly, but I noticed some like little brother, big brother syndrome. Like Chase Young was kind of like trying to impress Bosa. Like he was like, I got there first, and like I'm gonna do good. And Bosa was like, all right, you can come and you're making me better too, I guess. Like I noticed that when we're talking about that friendship and bromance, I also noticed a bit of like that. There seemed to be a really comforting and special familiarity between the two of them, and hopefully that carries on. I wonder if Chase Young's continue like this is obviously way too soon, but if he's very successful for the rest of the year, I wonder if the 49ers will try to keep him long term.
yeah, I don't know. I've seen a couple people like throw that idea out there, right? I'm not gonna rule it out. Like I just don't think we know. I think
Yeah.
when they made the trade for him, the intention was that he would be a rental, you know. Um, but things can change, right? Like they can always feel like, hey, like we actually have something kind of special here. Let's actually, bring him back. He's young, right? If he stays healthy the rest of the year, that's another positive thing to feel good about him long term. So who knows? Like I really don't know. No one really knows. I'm sure the 49ers don't even know right now. Like they need to see this season play out to really make that decision. But I'm sure there is a world, there is a type of season that Chase Young could have and a type of impact he can have on this team for them to, really consider it. At the same time, Emmanuel Sanders, very similar situation, but kind of the opposite because Emmanuel Sanders was like the big brother in that situation
Yeah,
for
with Debo,
some of the
right?
young guys. But they let him walk after that season, right?
Yeah.
So okay, great, you made your impact, and that impact was felt for like several years. So who knows? I don't know. I just feel like they usually stick to their original plan in that case, but we'll see. I'm sure it'll be fun discussion at the end of the season to debate.
I completely agree. Well, I know that you have a show coming up, so I'm gonna let us get off a little bit early. I wanted to touch super like 2 minutes on this last thing. I know it was a debate on at least Twitter and amongst some fans if you thought that Kyle Shanahan trying to get Christian McCaffrey that record at the end of the game. Some people said, "Hey, it's history. Hey, that like it creates a team atmosphere, makes players want to come to the 49ers. It makes players like Kyle Shanahan because they know that he's going to try to get him those things." On the other hand, people said, hey, if he scores a touchdown and breaks his leg and the 49ers miss the playoffs, a lot of people are going to be like, hey, Kyle Shanahan, there's going to be a fire under your ass. Why was Christian McCaffrey in the game up multiple touchdowns with a bunch of other backups? Did you have an opinion on if you thought it was good or bad? Do you understand both sides? How did you feel
Yeah,
about
I
that?
mean,
Because that was something that we had been keeping track of
yeah.
since the beginning.
I definitely understand both sides, but watching it live, I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. Like that tells you right there, not only that they have like this, like, I don't know, brotherhood. Like you said earlier, they were all so excited and like on their toes, like seeing if he can get it done.
Brock Purdy
And
had the helmet thing, and he was
yeah, he
listening
was
to
like
play call,
listening
and he
to the
would tell
plays.
Kittle, and they were like trying to see. I thought that was cute.
So the reason that I don't have an issue with it is because for once, like we're always thinking about the now and the season, right? We're thinking about, that certain game and if he got hurt, that would mess up your chances for the rest of the season. And that is true. Like there's that risk, right?
Yeah.
But you also got to think about the player. Like Christian McCaffrey wanted that. And for how much Christian McCaffrey means to the team and how much effort he puts into the team, he deserved that opportunity. Like that is literally like a legacy thing. That is a potentially once in a career type of opportunity for Christian McCaffrey. And Christian wants it. So because of everything he's done for the team, you want to give it to him. That's what it is. It's being selfless,
like showing
because
respect.
Kyle Shanahan like did weigh that risk. Like, he could get hurt here. Like, I know that, but Christian wants to do this. He wants to get this record. So I'm gonna try to give it to him, and we're gonna have fun doing it, right? So I thought it was great. I thought it just shows like the type of cool coach that Kyle is to even want to get him that. And you can tell Christian appreciated it, even though he didn't get it.
It's like that's why players play hard.
Just the thought of it counted. He, after the fourth down, he got off the field smiling. That stuff matters. That stuff matters to players. So I thought it was selfless for Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers to want to do that for him. I thought it was really cool.
I completely agree. I didn't even consider it from that perspective. I more just considered it like, hey, this is football, this is sports. Like these are competitors, and records do matter, and history does matter. But I didn't even think about it from the like perspective of like that's Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers showing respect to Christian McCaffrey and kind of saying like, this is how much you mean to us. And we are thankful that you brought, like, we believed in you and we brought you in because we believed in you. And that belief has paid off. And we're trying to like pay homage to that. So, but I'll wrap it up because I did keep you 5 minutes over the time that I thought you would. Everyone, thank you so much. So many people are joined in with us today. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I recently hit 1,000 subscribers. I'm going to have a live stream with Jose Sanchez tomorrow, and I'll be putting up lots of little videos. I've had so much fun doing this, and I have to admit, as I try to say I don't think that win or loss matters, but on these weeks where we win, I just am, or where the 49ers win, I just am in a much better mood, and I'm so excited to do content and interact with the comments and with everyone and have shows like this. I am so thankful to Steph for always coming on and bringing all her facts, knowledge, and enthusiasm. Everyone go subscribe to Steph's channel if you're not already. Steph, do you have anything else to promote before you go? I know you have a show at 4, so everyone tune in.
Yeah, I have a show here in 9 minutes or so. So with Weston, so make sure you tune into that. We can't wait to be talking about a win again in that show, because the shows that I do with Weston on Monday are Player of the Week shows. We literally vote on which player had like the best performance that week, or in the losses. You can imagine how hard that is. So on the losses, we talk about like which player provided a silver lining, gave us a spark. It was so hard. So we're excited. We're excited to be doing it again, but now talking about yet another win. It should be a fun show. So make sure you tune into that. Appreciate you, Ashley. Thank you so much. This was a fun show.
Yes. Thank you guys. Thank you everyone. Have a wonderful Victory Monday. Like and subscribe to both our channels. We'll be back tomorrow or later on today. Thank you.